Before we start, I wanted to make it clear that I'm intentionally relaying my story how I experienced it as it was happening, as opposed to revealing all the truth and revelation and keys that God gave me at once in this video. I'll be doing that in future videos. So what I'm sharing here is pre-revelation. I chose to do it this way because I believe there are many people at different phases of the process, and I thought it'd be most helpful to relate to me in the state that I was in. In the past months, God has demystified a lot of what I'm about to tell you. And later, I will go into those specific topics and tell you what God showed me. And then you can choose what revelation you're prepared to hear and work through based on the title of that video. The betrayal trauma is going to be a 3 or 4 part series. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. Just know that I'll be probably answering those in the future videos. Lastly, I'm praying about doing ministry calls, especially for single moms. Let me know if this is something you'd be interested in. And I'm going to include some critical resources that help me walk through this valley of the shadow of death in the description. Thanks, guys. Hi, everyone. Coming to you live from Fort Pulaski, outside of Savannah, Georgia, close to Tybee Island. You know, I bought this little thing and it came with a mic. I was like, I'll be fine. I don't need it. And the breeze is just such that I probably needed it. So I really hope this is okay. It's not that loud, except for when cars drive by. But today was, wow, God did a work on me today. I have been in a season of grieving, a lot of grief. It's real painful, but you know what? It's just painful for a moment. Today, I wanted to share my betrayal trauma story, and I wanted to make sure I didn't leave out important details. God has given me so many keys in this process, and I do believe that me being vulnerable and transparent in itself will heal and release like validation and you know, that feeling of I'm not alone, I'm not stupid, I'm not crazy. So I am going to share some things that could be triggering. But I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't come through the other side with some pretty amazing miracles and testimonies. So I was married for about almost 12 years. I mean, really, it was a 10-year marriage and a 12-year relationship. But because of how I started the relationship, I felt like I was married to this man. I committed my life. And in my head, it was out of covenant, like covenant with God, covenant with the husband. Like I thought I had all that stuff. Like I had it in the right place in my heart. My intentions, I felt, were pure. Now, it was not the right start. And that is something that I'm going to go into probably in depth in another video. But I'm going to refer to him as Chuck because that's something that we do in my betrayal trauma recovery group is we call the guys Chucks instead of going by their names. So I just want to make sure that the sound is okay because there's a heavy breeze. Pause. Here we go. You can still get the vibes of the salt marsh land outside, but it's quieter in here. So I was married in 2016 and Chuck and I moved to Hartford, Connecticut. We were both going to church. We both worked at Aetna Health Insurance. He was an actuary. I was in marketing and strategy. And after like a very adventurous and emotional and, first couple of years while we were dating, after we married, like I kind of started to feel neglected and like that I was kind of alone in my emotions. There would be times when I felt like he didn't know me very well or ask about me. There was one time I was like, do you even know what I do for work? Because we worked at the same company. In fact, I worked one floor above him in the same building. And he was he didn't even know what I did for work. And there began a pattern of me realizing like, oh, I'm more either invested or I'm more thoughtful, but in my mind, like, I was in it for life. So I never considered like leaving the marriage just for something as small as, oh, you're not very thoughtful. We were there for a couple of years when I was going kind of through some depression with my family. There was a lot of loss and tragedy. My dad had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and there was an opportunity for Chuck, that's gonna happen. It's fine. For him to move to Dubai. And I said no initially because I can't just leave my family. I already uprooted my life from the south to move up to the north with you. And like, that's just too much. Like, I need to be here to support my family. Well, we ended up going on a visiting trip, and I just felt God convicting me that yes, this was the path for us. And I just had a moment in the hotel room where I just collapsed crying because I knew that this is what I had to do, and leaving my family behind and the United States behind, my comfort zone behind, was part of the journey. So out of obedience, even though Dubai was not like my style, I was very turned off by the materialism, but excited by the adventure. So me, my depression, my anxiety, we all packed up and went to Dubai. And, change and transition kind of highlights the problems and the things beneath the surface, like in the marriage. So there was a lot of logistics, which Chuck is excellent at managing logistics and planning and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like more free-spirited, although now I'm quite well-rounded, I would say, in that regard. And my depression and anxiety kind of only got worse, but we ended up finding a church there that was recommended to us by a missionary who visited our church, who was part of our church in Connecticut. Like, our church supported that missionary, and that person had mentioned this church in Dubai. We didn't even know that like spiritual, like, Christianity was even allowed. This 7-8 years ago, we just didn't know what we didn't know. We get there, and it's definitely spirit-filled, and it was like, praise God, it was a wonderful experience, and I had my spiritual awakening there. And I'm so grateful, because this is the beginning of God untethering me, untangling me, and reattaching me to Him. When I didn't realize what I had attached myself to and what I had been idolizing. So now I'm just going to glance at my notes. During our years in Dubai, I would say like the marriage definitely grew. Like, God had given us so many prophetic words about ministry together, about helping refugees, children. God gave us a word about getting a home, a house. So we did that, and it ended up being a houseboat, and that was its own like prophetic experience that I have to do another separate video about, because it's a huge testimony. And like, yes, I was definitely the more gung-ho, vulnerable, like, let's go get into, like, let's serve, let's, and he was definitely more reserved. And there were times where he just felt really like he didn't belong. And all the issues that I had feeling frustrated with him, or blah blah blah, that stuff, I started to grow closer in my walk with God, reading the Bible, letting Him heal me, untangle me. And I became a lot more patient, a lot more just kind of letting the fruits, like the fruit change, like it instead of like nasty rotten fruit, like, why don't you do this, why can't you, la la la, it became a lot more like curiosity, because I want healing for you the way that God is healing me. Like, that's your portion. As a, I really began to see him not as someone who I needed to fix so that I could feel better, and more as, you are a son of God too. Like, you are beloved, you are all these things. Like, I want to help you because I can see that you're struggling, kind of thing. So there was a point where I told him, like, I just don't feel seen by you. And this was not in a, why don't you, I had changed at this point, I'd done enough work in healing that I was starting to change my approach with him and just try to just communicate, because I see that something's off that we need to address. Like, I used to feel seen and loved by you. Like, now I don't know what happened. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, you don't know what it means to feel like acknowledged, you mean? Like, you genuinely don't know what I'm talking about? He's like, no. I was like, oh. So then with that, I started researching, and I found out CEN, childhood emotional neglect. Started getting into that because I thought, if we understand and learn what the problem is, then we can fix it. God can heal anything. Like, God can redeem. We can do all these things he's called us to do, right? So that was how my mind was working. It was about 5 or 6 years ago now. Just gonna check my notes. So we're living on the boat. It's COVID time. You were quite social and active with our church, and God had given us words about having a child, and that was a change for both of us, because initially, like, I didn't really want to have kids. He didn't either, but then my heart changed, and I was like, I want whatever God wants, and he was still hesitant. But I was like so fixate, like, just like this is gonna happen, like, whether we want it to or not. Like, we have to obey the Lord. That's kind of like and it's still the way I am. I'm like, listen, if God has spoken and we've tested and we know it's him, and we need to stretch and grow, then we got to do it. There's no option but to do it, because it's going to be better than we can even imagine. And I still think that way. And so throughout the course of the marriage, you could say the dynamics were, I always wanted to stretch, and Chuck always wanted to preserve and stay comfortable and safe in his small world. Now, he's very successful at his job as an actuary. He had a lot of good things going for him. He had a trophy wife. I became a housewife. I left my job. We were covered in the news, the local news, for our lifestyle. I went from being a marketing insurance strategist to prophetic performing arts. I started learning how to hear God's voice. I was undergoing a lot of changes because of my revelation of God, what he was speaking to me, how he was growing me. I was just so excited. I was just, even though it was a lot of work, like healing, allowing God to untangle me from my depression and my anxiety, and I was just so thrilled at the new life and the peace that I was having, because even though my Chuck was not able to be the husband that I wanted and also needed biblically, because he was struggling in several areas, lust, pornography, these things, but I was in it for the long game. I was like, as long as we're committed to growing and flowing from grace and repenting and like, I can journey with you. So there was, I'm a like addicted to growth type of person, and you'll see over time that he was too fractured to want that. Quick anecdote. Mark was baptized about 3 years ago when I was pregnant with our daughter. I felt during church one day that he should speak to the pastor about it. And so I suggested it. And then when we went up to speak to the pastor also said, I felt God highlight you during the service. And so Mark ended up getting baptized, I think, a couple of weeks later. It was a big celebration with friends. So many people came out. The pastor who was there at our church said, wow, I really felt Holy Spirit on that. So he did make a commitment to the Lord, at least in some partial way that he was capable. Just keep in mind that soul parts is a very real part of this, and I don't believe that that was misleading, or, you know, I think he, in his own limited capacity way, really did try and was earnest in his own capacity in that part of his, in that fragmented soul part. Obviously, he was not able to walk it out to other areas of his life, and there's a lot more that I'll unpack later on that topic. So after we had our child, he was really sweet. It's so hard because I look back at the photos recently, and he was happy. It's so confusing. He was happy. It was beautiful. He cried, you know, when we had our child. He was just a bucket of tears the whole first week. And this is not someone that has a lot of emotion. I forgot to mention, a few years before that, he was diagnosed with autism. So, you know, also knowing, like, again, I pursued all these diagnoses because I'm trying to understand, like, help me help you. Like, I want to understand you. I want to love you better. I'm prepared to adjust. I will do anything because I believe in what God has said. I have 20 pages of prophetic words over our life, and I really clung to that. And it's not that I think they were wrong, and I will explain all that later. So by the time we had our child, after maybe the first 6 months to a year, he was getting overwhelmed, depressed. He had failed his actuarial exam. He could not pass the very last exam. He missed it by like a point. And I had, from my perspective, sacrificed to take care of her more so that he could study. I was helping him study. We had flashcards for the material that I would help him sketch things out. And yeah, okay, his brain doesn't work that way. My brain works this way. Let me help you figure this out in a way that works for your brain. Because, like, for me, it's like, this is our goal. Your career success is my success. I'm like, I can see the connection between finance, actuarial, and kingdom purpose and work. So, you know, I'm just that person. I throw myself 100% for the other person. Like, I will sacrifice myself to a fault. And I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I still don't think I did anything wrong in that regard, but you'll see that this is a pattern. So after, in that 6 months to a year after we had our child, he was really became more and more and more distant, more like a roommate, like not really initiating anything to do with our child, Rafaela. Liked her. She's amusing. She's funny. She's cute. But, like, desiring to spend time with her, no. Going out of his way to do things for her of his own volition, no. It was more and more me kind of, like, it felt like it's my child and I have to ask him to help. I didn't feel led. I mean, I already knew that I was the spiritually strong one, and I was very aware of the gap between us, and this is something I fasted and prayed about. I mean, I've researched all the deliverances. We did much counseling, and he was down to do the counseling. Like, we did it together. We had church friends who were helping us, so it's not like he didn't do anything. It's just that he didn't initiate anything, and I took it to mean that, like, he kind of couldn't, not just that he wouldn't. And because I understood his different diagnoses, but I also believed in healing and breakthrough and God's biblical design for a marriage, I just kept pressing toward the vision and the goal. Let me just check my notes. So then, during this time, my mother and my sister had come out at separate times to help me with Rafa, because I feel very overwhelmed as a new mom, trying to, you know, make sure my husband is okay and that he's managing mentally, and, you know, being a good wife to him. a good wife to him. Really, I was mothering him. In fact, I had a dream at one point where God told me to stop mothering him. I didn't know that I was, because I thought I was just being a good wife, trying to help him with his multiple needs and disorders. And that's a whole other separate video. But yes, he was definitely officially diagnosed for multiple things. And I know he found that troubling. I found that as helpful information that, I accept you and I love you and I want to grow with you, and I want to figure out how I can adjust so that I'm not frustrated and angry all the time, and we can find the right balance. And so at the time I was relying on family. I had my little brother, my bunso, who lived on one of the boats nearby. The guys would help me with Rafa and play with her and feed her rice with fish, and that's how I just had to manage by outsourcing a lot of things like cleaning, cooking. I had a lot of friends friends who were like family in Dubai that helped me to manage at this time. And I also did the things that I enjoyed, which was I was a performing artist, so I was doing some acting gigs at the time, especially during the high season, which is like the winter season. And I did murder mysteries and gigs like that, and that helped me to have, and I would serve on the worship team and things like this in my church. That gave me like purpose, and it refueled me because I was getting really drained at home. I was just getting overwhelmed. So summer 2024 rolls around. My daughter is about 1.5 years old, and my sister Drea and I decide to fly home for the summer to give my Chuck some space, because I could see that he was feeling off balance, and he was really struggling with adjusting to parenthood. He was able to articulate that much, that it's a lot for him. And so I thought, well, with his work, with his autism, with, maybe I just need, with my sister who was living with us, he just needs space. And I want to honor him and give him space. And then we'll meet up later in the summer, after a few weeks or a month or something like that. Man, this is so sad. So we leave, and for a few weeks, he's in very little contact, checking in me surface level. Hey, how are you? How did you sleep? But never asking about Rafa or wanting to see her or spend time talking to her on video. And so I called him out on it. I was like, hey, I don't know what you're thinking, but that's not acceptable. You should be missing her. Why aren't you at least asking about a video call? And he's, oh, I'm tired, I'm working. So during that time, while I'm visiting my family, I had a dream, and it was the end of July. I want to say it was the 28th or the 29th of July. And I had a dream, and in the dream, I'm going down I could feel it was a God dream. I was going down a road like this, kind of a mountain road, winding fast, and all of a sudden I see a blinking light on a left turn, and I turn left, because I'm like, okay, God, is this you? I turn down that path, and now instead of going this way, it's this type of thing, and I'm going slow up and down and up and down. And then I asked Jesus, if this is you, reveal yourself to me in the dream. And so I wrote down that dream, didn't know what it meant. I was really hoping it had to do with my career, because I was looking forward to doing more performing arts. Oh yeah, a year before that, I had done a film with some other people, co-wrote, produced, directed a film called Determine, and it was about people of determination, and it showed two characters, one with neurological differences and one with cerebral palsy, and partly inspired by my niece, who has CP and autism, and she's uses different mobility tools in order to move around and equipment, and then the other one based on my husband, who has an alphabet soup of different neurological differences, which I have, come to adjust to, appreciate, work with. We got to the point where we would just tease each other about these things because we were so different. So then, yeah, I was really thinking like, okay, maybe my career is going to take a different direction. That's what I came out with the dream. I was like, okay, maybe that's what it means. So then we met up later in the summer. That summer I'd also had to put all of our belongings in storage. We packed up my mom's house. We moved Mark has a Chuck. Chuck has a bunch of belongings from his whole previous life. He's 15 years older than me, so he's had a whole other generation of life before me. Packed all of his stuff up, put it in storage, and met up with my mom. We met up in Ireland. We went to France. And then my mom and I went to Pakistan. He went to the US for a friend's mother's funeral. We met back in Dubai. And finally, it's like, okay, like, I'm thinking, let's get back on track. Like, let's get back to what God has called us to do. Let's get our family in order. Let's get our house in order. Like, we have our afternoon teas and strategy discussions sometimes, which we really enjoy. And, I always wanted like a kingdom partner, a team mate, and Chuck is such a pleasant person, and he's very like business structured oriented. So like we would have decent discussions. I always had the vision and the heart. He usually had the logistics, but we hadn't been able to talk about too much for a while because we were really overwhelmed with our child, and we'd done a lot of travels already in that first year. And so it's like, here I'm thinking like, let's regroup. Well, he had shared that during that time, so this would have been August, September of 2024, that he was, really depressed, and he was just really, trying, but this is hard, and, being a parent is hard, and, he was feeling a little hopeless, in our discussion. And he had also sent me an email, and the email, because he thinks better in email, the email is like, I was researching all the benefits of being a parent, and I don't feel any of them. I feel only the negatives. Like, I feel like you're supposed to have joy, and you're supposed to have feel like legacy, and you're supposed to be excited to show them your things, and I don't feel any of that, is what he said basically in the email. Man, when I got that email, I was like, this is a symptom. This is something that can be managed. We just need to get the right help to help him reframe and see, come out of that way of thinking and see the beauty and the meaning and the mission of having children and blah, blah, blah. And it's not like it was easy for me. I mean, being obedient to the Lord is not easy. I'm not like someone who loves kids. I love my child to the moon and back a bazillion times, but children are difficult, right? It's quite demanding. It changed our life, and we were together for 9 years before we ever had a child, so it was a huge change. So I sent that to our kind of accountability marriage couple that we had done the counseling with, and they were like, okay, we'll talk to him, but we see a lot of hope. We think we're just gonna work through it, that kind of vibes. So after that, it was our daughter's birthday. We celebrated her birthday. Again, I initiated everything. He just kind of goes along with everything pleasantly, normal, fine. We continue having marital relations during this time. It was a few times. It was not as much as I wanted, or it should have been. He was tired a lot. The following months after this, he was again, really overwhelmed, and work, and I feel a lot of pressure, and he just kind of would be checked out. So he would go to work, come back, and be checked out. He'd be on his phone reading, sitting with us there, but mentally not there, emotionally not there, looking at his phone, reading the news. And yeah, one more thing. At this time, I just want to be clear, I was communicating, I can't handle this. I feel really overwhelmed. I know that you're pressured, but can you please help me with baby? I know we're working on things, and you're trying. I'm so sick today. Can you please arrange your work schedule so you can help me, because I can't function today. And he would be like, sorry, I really have to go to work. Later, I find out twice a week the kind of work he was doing. So it's not like I didn't communicate my desperation. It's not like he didn't know. And later we'll find out and unpack more that he didn't have any empathy, and he was dissociating from the suffering that I was enduring, but also trying to manage and help him. But I was also struggling myself, and he did know, but he didn't compute because he could not deal. He chose to dissociate and discard Rafa and I out. So after that, I really doubled down on the spiritual warfare and the learning about Spirit of Python. Like, I felt God highlight that to me. I was interceding more. At this time, I was also feeling really sick and tired. I was drinking a lot of karak chai just to survive. I had to put Rafa in a little preschool because I just could not handle parenting her all the time. I felt like I was carrying the whole weight of the marriage, the home. I had to make every decision, and I didn't I already knew that I was more of the initiator and problem solver, but I couldn't really describe why I felt so overwhelmed and burdened. So that went on for 9 months. Birthdays, my birthday, holidays happen. His birthday, he didn't give me anything. He barely wished me, but that was kind of normal. And it's it's been normal for a long time. It's not like it was new. So then his birthday came around. I did a celebration for him, which he asked me not to, but I had kind of already planned the surprise, and he was and I didn't know why he asked me not to. I thought it was just because he was kind of antisocial. He stopped going to church. He was becoming depressed and withdrawn, and I was kind of pushing through, but also because I understood his sensitivities, because he has a lot of sensory sensitivities, a lot of social sensitivities. I really picked and chose my battles, and it was I really wasn't getting anything from him, but I felt that it was that I needed to support him. And I forgot to mention, the reason I pushed, not him, but myself, is because during the summer, I had listened, the summer when I was home, when I had had that dream, during that summer, I watched a Heidi Baker video, and it was about stop for the one. And because I'm so ministry, mission focus oriented, I was like, yes, God, I want to do this. I have so much compassion, so much overflow to give. And I wrote in my journal, I was like, God, who do you want me to stop for? And he said, Mark. Well, gosh, you know what? It's too late. It's too late. And so I was like, okay. I mean, I wish I could do more for more people, but okay. I'll keep stopping for the one. I'll keep stopping for him. And so that kind of focus, priority, came through to this next season of very, enduring basically oppression. It's the weirdest oppression because he's not a violent person. He's just absent and neglectful. Now, he was becoming more angry and overwhelmed, especially between January and May of last year. So I had this counseling couple from our church had suggested a wonderful deliverance pastor, counselor in South Africa. And I said to Mark, can we work with him? I would like to do this because I feel something's, bound to break, something, we got to figure out what this is, right? And so he agreed. And we started meeting with him sometimes together, sometimes independently. He would get really sleepy and tired and brain fog. I knew that was one of the symptoms, both spiritual warfare and the autism, and his, again, plethora of special situations. Brain fog wasn't new, but whenever I would try to have some kind of deep discussion with him, he would withdraw and shut down. Again, this is over the last 9 years that would happen, but we would make enough progress that like things were kind of moving in the right direction. So then this brain fog, I realized, okay, this is definitely spiritual, because he would like get so bad that he would just collapse and fall asleep before a session, after a session. So we worked with that counselor for many months. This whole time we were working with him for like 5 months at that time. I felt like I was in the hidden season. I felt God confirming, like, keep doing what you're doing, keep interceding. I was learning a lot about the spiritual realm. I found a lot of great resources and pastors during that time, and just like growing in my, I want to say understanding, but I really didn't have understanding until later. But I wanted to understand, and I guess I was growing my toolbox, my knowledge, and trying to make sense of it all, knowing that like what God has said, like something has to happen, like we're gonna get to the end of this thing, we're gonna have a breakthrough. I was feeling like really sick some days, like normal sickness, like cold, flu, but also adrenal fatigue, super sleepy, to where at the point I would have my daughter with me and she would be wide awake playing, and I would have, she's 2 years old, and she would have to stay on the upstairs part of the main part of the living room of the boat, and I would just have to go downstairs and fall asleep. Or I would be half awake, but I couldn't play with her, and then she would just cry for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, because I could not move. I was so tired and overwhelmed, and like my body would it's like my eyes got so heavy and I couldn't move a muscle. I really relied on friends, family. I called my aunt from Colombia. I was like, Tia, necesito ayuda. Come out here and help me. She lived with us for 3 months, helped me cook, clean, play with baby, so that I could manage the mental and emotional load. I didn't know what was going on. One time someone prayed for me at church, and they were just like canceling the oppression, like rebuking, like I was feeling things, but I didn't know what it was. Rafa kept asking, he had to work so much. Rafa kept asking, where's daddy? Where's daddy? All day she was asking, where's daddy? And his work really wasn't that demanding, but he said, because I know how he is, because I know that he takes hours to send a simple email, and that's not an exaggeration. I know how his brain works, so I thought, he's a perfectionist, he's taking his time, he overthinks things, like that's what I was assuming was happening. So my life got quite small during that time, and I was just trying to keep myself afloat. I couldn't be involved in church. I couldn't even attend church. I couldn't see friends because it was too much energy for me to get in the car and drive. But I was still myself. It's just that most of the time I was too tired and overwhelmed to enjoy my life, enjoy being a mom. I started having a drink a day just to reward myself. It's very sad. It's something I had to forgive myself for, was having, we would go to like this little pool on the resort where we lived, and they would give me a free drink, and I was like, sure, why not? I made it through today. Or I would have a glass of wine at night just to relax and unwind. But then it started happening every day, and I was like, I knew it was happening, but also I was like, there's no other way I'm gonna make it until I get home the next summer. So that was all about a year ago. This was happening last spring 2025. If I initiated a date, we would go on a date. It wasn't very often, because whenever he was home, I would ask him if he could help with Rafa so that I could like go see my friends or do something at night, but that became few and far between. And yes. Okay, here we go. Here's the good stuff. So then, it was one day last spring. It was like maybe February, March, April, I can't remember. He had a missed call from a number, from initials that I didn't recognize. And we were in the car with my aunt and my child, and we're on our way to a Chinese restaurant, our favorite Peking duck place, which I will probably never go back to. Just kidding. If I'm in Dubai, I will go back. And he gets a missed call. And while he's driving, because he's driving and it shows up on his phone, which has the maps on it, he boop, swipes it away. And I said, "Who's that?" And he did not respond. So my heart sank. I knew something was terribly wrong. When we park and get out of the car, I said, I'm gonna need to speak to you and, ask you, we're gonna have to have a serious discussion because you're obviously hiding something. So we have a meal. I don't think I could focus on enjoying the meal, but when we get back home, I asked my tia to help me with my child so that we can go upstairs and talk. And I asked him, are you going to tell me what's going on? Because I would like to, be honest and work through whatever's going on. And he said, "Oh, well, you remember how you kind of had an emotional thing with that guy that you were messaging years ago? It's kind of like that. It's someone that I met when I was in the US briefly, and we've just been texting. I don't know why they called me. I haven't been in touch with them." So that was, I never experienced him lying to me before. And I didn't know that he was really capable of that level of deceit. So I thought I understood, oh, well, this is a spiritual attack. I understand that there are symptoms. I was very pragmatic about it. I was very I understand. I've been there, and, I repented of that, and that was really hard. And I think we just need to be aware that the enemy is going to try and attack whatever we have on our life, and he's going to try and distract us and bring the family down. So we just need to be honest, and I forgive you. I don't even think, he didn't ask for forgiveness, so light bulb. So then we went to a hotel that night, and yeah, we were a married couple. So that was really unfortunate. And after that, he would have glimpses of being better and then times of being much worse. And all the while, we're still doing our weekly counseling with this deliverance guy who's working through Mark's childhood trauma. And, as the deliverance counselor told me, he's quite dissociated, meaning he can just be so compartmentalized that he's out of one world and in another world. And so I was because I was growing in my understanding and starting to piece things together, I had faith and compassion for the long run. I was willing to work through it, even though it was hard, right? Another important detail here: during that period of last spring, when things were getting more difficult and more oppressive, I had multiple dreams about this woman. I just didn't know what it was. I had a dream where he was on all fours, and there was a girl with black hair sitting on top of him, riding him around like BDSM weird stuff. It was a nightmare, and I woke up, or I had sleep paralysis at that moment. And I could feel that I was trying to wake up. I was trying to get up. And I could even see outside of myself that I was struggling to wake up. And I was yelling, screaming for Mark, please help me. But my mouth wasn't working. It was all in my mind that I was trying to wake myself up. And finally, I woke myself up and I called for him, and he came down. I didn't tell him what the dream was. I didn't think about it. I just wrote it down and saved it for a later date. And then later, obviously, I understood what it meant and that God had been giving me dreams. So there's a lot of details that God was giving me, showing me in the spiritual realm, but at the time I did not have capacity to interpret them.
but I did write them down.
So then we had planned a family cruise on the way back to the US. So we left end of May, to go back to the US. And when we arrived in Italy, you know, he had to do some remote work, so he did some remote work. We tried to connect intimately. He wasn't able to, which is weird. We got on the cruise, and you know, when we had an opportunity, again, I initiated, because like, this is my husband. I want to be close to my husband. Like, usually he wants to be close to me, and I know he's been really overwhelmed. So then this was the second time that like he just couldn't, and this time my body like grieved. I just like doubled over, I think from rejection. Like mentally I didn't feel rejected, I think, because like I have like consciously very self-secure in Christ, but emotionally and physically my husband was not, you know, I think my body really felt rejected, and I was just grieving, but I didn't know, like mentally I was like, why am I grieving? But like I was grieving. And after that, you know, he just said, my mind's just scrambled. Not atypical for him, unfortunately. He's like, my mind just scrambled, I'm not sure, just give me a few days and I'll be able to. God, it's so disgusting. So then a couple of fun nuggets, God winks after that. We went to lunch, and I was crying still. I was with it was the three of us, me, my daughter, and him. My aunt was also on the cruise, but she wasn't with us at this time. And I was crying, and I didn't really know why I was crying. And Rafa said, "It's okay, Mommy, I have a book for you." And she pulled out her little hands and gave me her imaginary book. And I said, "What book is this?" And she said, "It's the Bible." I was like, okay. And then not even a second later, staff of the boat was walking by, and he had huge biceps, and on the biceps it was a cross with an anchor, and it said redemption. And I was like, oh wow, okay, I'm taking that as a word. Whatever's happening, like, I'm taking that as a word. And then that night when we all went to sleep, I just felt this, I have to check his phone. I had been avoiding checking his phone for a long time because I had faith and patience. You know, I was like, I'm not going to be that controlling, crazy person, because God is doing a thing. You know, this man is unwell, but I'm here to support, and I'm just like, I'm playing the long game. That's how I felt about it. And that's why I never checked his phone, even though I could, you know, I saw the warning signs, but I didn't interpret them as an affair. So I find the pictures, I find the messages to his best friend, and some of them to her, and you know, they're absolutely in love. They, you know, and in the messages to his best friend, I found where he had said, yeah, you know, I convinced Rose that I had time to think up this story, and she believed it. And oh yeah, when we come to visit you this summer, we'll have to have a code word for how we're going to talk about, you know, his affair partner. And then the messages to her were very like immature, like they're two teenagers, like just very shallow, and you know, very sexual, and like just I was like, I don't recognize this person. Like, who is this person, and how could he be so evil toward me and like cruel toward me when I have been exceedingly patient and loving and sacrificial? And so, you know, when I found all that, they call it D-Day, this discovery day, when I found all that, I don't think I didn't cry as I was looking at it. I looked at it very objectively, like, okay, this is this. He lives in another reality. He's a very sick person. He's very broken. And, you know, I come out of the bathroom because it's like midnight, and I I'd been sitting in the bathroom and I recorded everything on my phone. I took pictures of everything. So I captured everything so that I would have it in my records because I knew that would be important. Hashtag journalism degree. And my daughter wakes up crying. So I console her, put her back to sleep, and then I say, hey, just like this, I found all the pictures. I know what's going on. You know, will you just tell me what you want? Just tell me what you want to do. And he froze. He did not speak for 45 minutes. He froze. His mind was frozen. He was just absolutely mentally paralyzed. And I was like, there's something really wrong with this person. And I just felt like I should not at that point just tell him, well, I'm leaving or I'm doing this. I felt like there was some kind of, like I needed to put the ball in his court so that he could own what was happening, because he was clearly not. And I can only describe like Holy Spirit took over me that week, because I did feel like I did have my moments when I was feeling the pain intensely, but I mostly like operated out of objective compassion, forgiveness. Like I was like, listen, I forgive you. Whatever happens, it's gonna be okay. But you need to tell me yourself what's going on. He didn't want to say anything. He didn't want to even like apologize. He didn't want to talk. Like he just like could not. It really felt like something was holding his tongue. And I was, at this point, I'm like, you know, still learning how the spiritual realm works, how psychology works, what's going on with this dissociation that he supposedly has. And I said, if you can't talk and you don't want to say anything, or you can't say anything, then should we ask our pastor from South Africa, who's our deliverance counselor, Chris, to help us? And he was like, yeah, I want to do that. He like genuinely did want to have him mediate, because I couldn't get anything out of him, you know. And he was like, you know, you can ask me questions. I was like I don't want to be traumatized and then be the one also owning everything. Like, it's too much. So we get on the call with him. Thankfully, again, we're on a cruise in the middle of the Mediterranean, very little Wi-Fi, and thank God he was available. We did a call, and he explained to Chuck, what you're going through is you're dissociated, and, you know, did you know that you were doing this? Yes, I knew it was wrong, but I kept it all separate in my mind. And he was like, I didn't know there was, you know, anything wrong with me. I didn't know there was so much wrong with me. And I was like, oh my gosh. I have known for a long time. There's a lot of things. I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of brokenness that God needs to heal, you guys. And so by the way, I hadn't slept. There's like, my mind is going, racing. You know, obviously I had called my sister and my mom. I was like, my daughter can't grow up without a dad. And, you know, this horrific thing has happened. And I was freaking out, but also calm. Like, I don't know how to explain, you guys. Most of the time I was quite calm and composed. Again, it was only supernatural. And because it's like, I had already been so distant and separated from him for many years. I had already felt discarded and neglected for so many years that I literally just looked at him like a brother in Christ that needed help. And I felt like my main job was to minister to him for many years. And I did that till the very end. So then, you know, Chris said, would you like to commit to the healing process? Because if you do, and if you keep following, and if you know, stay obedient to the Lord, if you allow him to heal you, if you do the work, because his specialty is trauma, inner healing, and deliverance, then God, you know, God will heal you. Like, you will have breakthrough, blah, blah, blah. And so he said, yes, I will try. He said yes. And so I was like, okay, then I will support you. But Chris was very clear. He needs to do 90% of the work. I need to do 10%. After that, I had my own personal session with him where he walked me through inner healing and deliverance from the trauma of finding everything. what I had seen, and that I had a repeat of that session many times over the last 8 months. It's not just one time, but the immediate extreme pain and grief I had a session for. And whenever I had that, then I was able to have encounters with Jesus and Holy Spirit and putting the pain and the grief into the wounds of Christ, and like taking out the venom, taking out the sting. And it gave me, I felt like refreshed, regenerated, so that I could war in the spirit. And I mean, I had visions, I had dreams about snakes, and I was chopping things, and I was doing all kinds of warfare. I messaged a small group of our closest prayer partners, explaining what happened, asking them to pray in the spirit. And I got a couple of prophetic words back that confirmed, like, you know, the Lord is exposing the darkness, and the verse, run the race, I'll run the race, I'll fight the fight, this kind of thing, and I'll do the work the Lord has before me. And so I felt on board with that. I felt peace. I felt like, yes, you know, we're gonna basically, God can redeem anything, we're gonna work through this. It's gonna be extremely painful, but like the things that need to be dealt with are coming to the surface, like all of it, right? So then, because of this dissociation, there's like this, it's not just the betrayal, it's like there's this whole mental health issue. We had stopped at a port, and, you know, we're still just trying to be a family and pretend like things are normal because my aunt is there. And I told her, like, we really need your help, but we're going through some things, but I thank you for helping us with Rafa so that we can work on things. And at the dinner table, while we're at port, as soon as we get Wi-Fi, I see him switch. Now, this is where things get a little freaky, right? We're different soul parts. This is what I've learned. He may not have dissociative identity disorder, which is where you can literally be like an entire different identity inside your body, but he is different soul parts. So the affair partner, Chuck, I saw him come, and he was texting her. It's like I didn't even need to read the text to know what he was saying. Same with the best friend. His face changed, his lips changed. And so I knew that I was going to have to sneak his phone and check again that night. That night he slept with it under his pillow so that I couldn't get it. And I knew his password. I don't know why he never changed his password, but thanks. I was going to tell you the password, but I guess that would be a little bit too cheeky. So then the next day, as we're talking, I'm like, hey, how are you feeling? You know, like, how are you feeling? Oh yeah, you know, I feel fine about things. Well, that is not a good sign if you feel fine. And so I said, oh, okay, cool. Let me see your phone. And he just looked defeated, absolutely defeated. He was like, and he gave me his phone. That's when I found a whole other app with chats. And I saw a lot more. I have 30 minutes of video of all the things that were said and pictured. And I mean, you know, I found exactly what he was doing when we were having family time and he excused himself to go to the bathroom for 20 minutes. I found that. And he had said to her the day before, again, after we've committed to like working on the marriage, he said, hey, she found out everything and I'll have to be in touch later. Like that. Like, you know, I can't text right now, but I'll text later, this kind of thing. And so because I understood that he had this disorder, I started to discern when he's switching to basically the family husband versus the affair partner one versus the best friend one versus, you know, the one that engages with his family. All different people, different protocols. And that's his normal. It's still his normal. Now, I believe God can heal anything. I still do. So that was a very tricky thing to balance, because then I would basically have to say to the counselor, he's doing this. And so we decide, okay, we need to set some very clear boundaries. Like, you're going to have to, like, obviously, you're going to have to start cutting these people off, because if we're going to focus on this, you need to protect the family and the marriage. And so it was kind of like, hello. And we had a discussion later that day where we just kind of had like a come to Jesus. And I was like, he started talking to me. I think after I was very silent for a while, he started talking to me and sharing how he was sorry that he never saw me or appreciated me. And, you know, he was genuinely crying and seemed to be genuinely remorseful. And he, you know, said that, you know, I deserved better, blah, 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 all these things, right? And, you know, I asked him about, like, what kind of love do you have for me? Because this is the love I have for you, which is not romantic love. It was just agape love. Just from being able to see him so objectively out of myself. Maybe I'd been hurt so much that I just also kind of separated myself from him spiritually and emotionally until I knew it was going to be safe. And so that's one thought. But I really had just been praying for him for many, many, many years, and finally this thing had happened. So I kind of saw it, as painful as it was, I saw it as a good thing. And that night after our daughter went to sleep, he had a huge revelation moment. And we just sat, I was like, hey, I want to say some things, and then I want to pray for you. And I had kind of written him like again, remember that the way I see him is he has a serious mental health condition from his childhood trauma. That's not untrue. That's still true today. And so while I was trying to release him while also having compassion for his journey and being a support, but what I did was I reminded him of who he was to me and who he is as a person, like the good things. And I just was like, I'm speaking to the Mark who, you know, we did our silly wedding dance. I'm speaking to the Mark who, you know, when my dad died, blah, 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 you know, just like I started just reminding him of our journey and all the beautiful things that God had done in our lives. And, you know, the things that I loved about him, the quirks, you know, because he basically felt that for many years I didn't like him or love him. Because of all the things that are wrong with him, which he internalized. And so I was speaking the opposite, but at the same time, I was like, I did a Blessing of the Spirit by Arthur Berg. I read that and I blessed him, because at this point I understood, like, we're in full spiritual warfare mode now. This is like God, you've committed to a thing. I'm going to support you. I'm going to pray for you and with you. And, but I'm also like, obviously not okay with what's going on. But I appreciate that it's a journey, and I basically, I didn't give him anything he deserved. That's called mercy, right? And in that moment where we were sitting out there on the balcony of the boat, I'm looking out, I've said my piece, I cried. It felt like I had just released him as my husband, me as his wife. I just like, it just felt like this is the end of that first like marriage. And in my heart, I'm like, okay, and if things work out, then we can have a new marriage. That's what the mode that I was in. And so I know this is long, guys. This is where it gets interesting. Then he was quiet for like 20 minutes. Didn't say anything. He's just looking down. It's like he's processing stuff for the first time. It's like he's had a shock and he didn't know what was going on. And I'm tempted to say something. I don't say anything because I just felt like, hold your tongue. Let him, you know, see if he says anything. He starts, you guys, it's about to get freaky. He starts crying like, okay, so that happens for a little while. I'm like, okay. Some emotions are happening. This is a good sign. I'm quiet. I don't think I even like reached to touch him or anything. I'm just sitting there next to him, observing and praying. And then things get weird, because he's like trying to speak, but he couldn't. And he starts to make these weird facial things. So I'm gonna reenact, you guys, because because I'm an actress and I just need someone to hear me when I say something abnormal was happening. I have a couple of theories, but he just started like making really weird facial, exaggerated. This is not something normal he's ever done, but it's like something was trying to get out. Y'all know where I'm going. Something was trying to get out of him, and he couldn't speak. So I'm like praying in the spirit, because I'm freaking out silently. I'm like, what's happening? And I'm just like praying in tongues under my breath, because I believe something critical is happening. I don't know how to handle it. I'm slightly scared. And he just like, and then a really weird voice comes out. He goes, I had a nice time with Rafa today. And it is not his voice. This is a different voice, sound like of old grandpa that like, freaking, it's weird. Okay, there's nothing normal about what's happening at this point. And he bursts into tears, and he basically said like, I think she likes me. He's saying he thinks his daughter actually likes him. Now, what was happening for the first 2.5 years of her life? She adores the man. It's her dad. She's his princess, right? She thinks so anyway. He had a different princess he was taking care of the whole time, but she's absolutely enamored with him. He's fun with her. He's light with her. You know, they have their own little relationship. And so that was just really sad that for the first time, because he's coming back to reality. Hello, yes, we're real. We have real emotions. She actually loves you. And so in his mind, it's like, oh, we were playing today and she actually likes me. And I'm like, oh man, this man is very, very broken. It's very, very sad. And because I saw all the messages where he was like messaging his best friend, like, yeah, I'm just killing time. You know, what do you got to do? You know, anytime he was playing with her or took her to do an activity, yeah, Rose needs a break, so I guess I'm just going to kill the clock with this kid, is disgusting. But so he's coming to earth for a moment and realizing like, yes, your child does love you and need you and want her and you in her life. So after that, I really didn't see anything. I can't remember if I mentioned, but that night before that happened, I saw a shooting star, but he didn't see it. I saw it, but he didn't see it. There was something miraculous happening. God was in the moment in everything that was happening, this kind of end of the marriage, this being aware of what was happening. All right, guys, we're almost at the end of this story. So on the last day of the cruise, we're in Italy, Naples, yes, and we do our last deliverance session with our counselor, Chris, and it is like one where we kind of both release the affair partner and we recommit ourselves to the Lord and to each other, and it's beautiful, it's powerful. The weather was supposed to be sunny, but a huge storm rolled in, and it just felt like the judgment and blessing of God was on us in that moment. It was nothing short of miraculous. Even Mark was like, wow, this is just like very surreal moment. It's like he prayed over me as his wife, and he like prayed for God's protection over me, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day, we were going to go to Rome and fly out. And one of the things we agreed was that he was going to send the email to the girl and break up with her because, like, completely cut things off, because otherwise I wouldn't feel safe, doing this work if he didn't do that. And so that was a thing where I had to ask, like, hey, have you written that? Have you had time? And he was like, oh, it's just been a lot going on. I haven't had time. So I was like, well, I'll take Rafa if you haven't had time to think about that. And he's a very slow processor. It takes him months and years where it takes normal people days. Sorry, normal isn't a nice word, but that's the truth. So I communicate, like, I can't go anywhere with you until you send that email. Like, we're sitting at the train station waiting to go in to go into the city for the day and then get the flight. I was like, I can't go with you until you do this. And so I can't remember, like, I definitely helped him do it, like, send it. But I also didn't want to be controlling, but I also was like, this man has a disorder. So, like, I was like, I need to make sure that I need to see that you've sent it. I need to, I need proof of everything. So we got on the Wi-Fi at the train station and did that. And then the whole rest of the day, his face was like this. And my daughter asks him at some point, she asked me at some point when she saw his face like this. The whole day he was just grieving. She asked me, why is Daddy crying? Children from the mouths of babes. So, we fly home. We land in New York City. As part of our counseling and deliverance, we did a baptism together in a pool on a rooftop. Again, it was clear and then it became cloudy and rainy, and it was beautiful. And we did like communion, and it was powerful. And we decided to separate for a few days because he was going to go stay with some family in Connecticut, friends who are like family in Connecticut. And then I was going to go down to my family in Savannah to recuperate for a couple of days. And then we would regroup at his family reunion, which was planned coming up. And I said, as long as you're committed to the process, like, I'll come up to the family reunion, but only so that we can work on things and so Rafa can have time with her cousins and her family that she rarely gets to see since we live abroad. Okay, quick location change. But this is the end of the first part of the story, because we go our separate ways for a few days. I go home to my family. My older sisters are waiting for me in Savannah, Georgia, so I fly home by myself with Rafa. And there was even like a confirmation that happened on the flight, where, again, I interpreted it this way. Could be that I was looking for a sign and I misinterpreted something, but the airplane that we were flying on was delayed. The pilot came on 15 minutes after we were supposed to depart and said, hey, just to give you an update, there's something, a small issue that we just need to reset the plane. It's just like a communication error. Once we reset the plane, it's going to be fine. It's going to go away. There's not actually like a fundamental issue with the plane. No need to be worried. But while we were waiting for that, there was someone who was running late to the flight, and I decided to delay our flight just a few more minutes just to wait for that person to get on the plane. So I started crying because that meant something to me. And Rafa and I fly home. My sisters are crying, waiting for me and Rafa at the airport. And my older sister, Andrea, is trembling. She gives me a big hug. She just started crying. And I was like, what's going on? Like, Don't exaggerate, you know, I'm fine. And I didn't realize that it was basically like coming home from war. I had basically been in a battle, and I didn't realize it. And so that was the beginning of the separation. There's so much more, you guys. Let's get the keys from all of it.